At the heart of the launch base zone located on the floating island, a new weapon of destruction has just been completed. It seems that Knuckles' plan to rid the island of Robotnik was unsuccessful. A countdown signals the weapon's imminent launch. The scaffolding falls away and the thrusters fire. This huge object slowly ascends into the air, no longer needing the island to keep it afloat. From inside we hear the cackling voice of Robotnik. After all this time, all this work, his greatest and deadliest weapon is ready for action. Soon, the people of Mobius will look to the skies and tremble with fear as they see Robotnik's new base of operation, the Death Egg. We next turn our attention to the Emerald Hill Zone, where Sonic and Tails are fighting off another swarm of badniks, finding it no challenge at all. With Sonic's super speed and Tails' swift flying abilities, they can easily smash apart the enemy one by one. Sonic is chased by a Rhinobot, but can easily outrun it. He leads the machine right over the edge of a nearby cliff, but as the Badnik points out, it means that Sonic will fall to his death along with him. Though the Badnik seems to have forgotten that there's a certain two-tailed flying fox nearby who can swoop in and catch him at a moment's notice. Sonic and Tails float in the air, watching as the Badnik falls and crashes into the ground. And even though they don't show it, I'm guessing the animal who was trapped inside somehow survived. But then, a dark shadow is cast over the area. The two look above them, trying to see what's causing it, and obviously come to the conclusion that whatever it is can't be good. That same shadow fills the rest of the zone. The Emerald Hill folk turn their attention to the sky as a huge object slowly blots out the sun, eclipsing it completely. One of the Emerald Hill folks tells everyone not to worry, that it's nothing more than a solar eclipse where the moon blots out the sun. But they soon realise it's something far more deadly, as two huge glowing eyes light up and shine down on them. Everyone starts to panic and run, but there's nowhere they can hide against such a huge and powerful weapon. Within seconds, the Death Egg fires its eye lasers at the zone, completely destroying the village. What's more is that Robotnik's voice can be heard declaring that it's only a small portion of his power. But now he turns to the real reason that he is here. He orders the survivors to bring him his enemy, to bring him Sonic the Hedgehog. Otherwise, they'll feel the full force of his power. Though there's no need to find him, as moments later Sonic and Tails come racing onto the scene, with Sonic shouting that there was no need to blast the zone as he isn't afraid of the Doctor. But Robotnik responds saying that he knew that, but he couldn't wait to test out his death rays. Tails has an idea. He thinks that he can catch Robotnik by surprise, since he is the only one who can fly, and as such the only one capable of getting up to the Death Egg right here and now. He heads straight towards the giant weapon, leaving Sonic behind, who shouts for him to come back. But it's too late. Robotnik knows what's going on. He charges up his death rays once again, then fires at Tails. The beam hits the poor fox. The force of it easily destroys him, leaving nothing more than a puff of smoke where he once was. Tails not only lost, but it seems that he paid the ultimate price. Sonic looks up and around, hoping to find his friend somewhere in the area, but there's nothing left of him. Sonic is obviously furious. He charges in recklessly, hoping to avenge his fallen friend. He shouts up that Robotnik won't find him such an easy target. With his speed, he should hopefully be able to avoid the death rays. Robotnik simply laughs, not seeing any challenge at all. He expands the area of the beam and sets it to full power before firing one more time. He hits not only Sonic, but the entire zone. The beam hits Sonic with its full force, and just like Tails, he is unable to stand up to its power. The Hedgehog is burned to a crisp, and with him goes the hopes of the entire planet. Everything goes dark for a moment, before we return to Robotnik and Grimer huddled around a monitor. Robotnik seems ecstatic at what he has just seen, but then we find that everything we had just witnessed had been a simulation, one of many thought up by Grimer to show off the power of a completed Death Egg and how easily he could wipe out his enemies. But then we also find that the finishing touches to the Death Egg are being put in place, and at this rate it will be ready for action in only a matter of weeks. Quite some time later, Sonic and Tails are flying up to the floating island in their plane. Tails wishes that he could go on ahead with Sonic, but apparently this is a mission which could require Sonic's super speed, and as such he goes it alone. As soon as he is close enough, Sonic jumps off onto the ground of the floating island, landing in the Sandopolis zone. He begins searching the area, and after a while, he finds what he is looking for, when he sees the Death Egg off in the distance. He knows that the repairs are nearly complete, so he has to find a way to destroy the thing as soon as possible. He finds a place nearby where he thinks he will be well hidden and scope out the base, but he isn't hidden well enough as the ground begins to quake around him. A badnik bursts up from the sand and strikes Sonic in the back, catching him off guard and knocks him to the ground before it dives back beneath the surface. As Sonic tries to get back to his feet, he hears a familiar voice nearby, Knuckles, who is more than a little surprised to see him after telling him not to return to the island. Knuckles warned Sonic that the badnik could be back at any moment, and sure enough it bursts back out of the sand, trying to attack once again. But with Sonic's quick reflexes, he is able to jump into a spin attack before he gets hit again. Instead, he hits the badnik first and breaks it apart. With that little problem taken care of, Knuckles hops down and asks Sonic what he is doing up here, not wanting uninvited guests on his home. Sonic snarkily replies back that he wouldn't have to be here if Knuckles had dealt with Robotnik and his Death Egg. But then, an all too familiar voice calls out nearby. Sonic recognises it instantly as someone he didn't want to deal with again. When he turns around, he is met with an old acquaintance, Captain Plunder. Knuckles is growing more annoyed by the second. More and more people are turning up on his island, while he already has more than enough to deal with. Sonic asks what Plunder is doing here. He is of course after the main thing on a pirate's mind, treasure. With the help of a new member of his crew, a professor from Metropolis University, they were able to find a location of a huge amount of treasure. Knuckles walks straight up to Plunder and orders him to leave, but Plunder simply ignores him and dismisses any threat. He instead orders the professor to start looking for something, and he goes over to a nearby wall to examine the markings. It doesn't take him long to find what he is looking for, a hidden button among the symbols. When he pushes it, the ground begins to shake violently. Everyone has trouble keeping their balance. Then, up from the depths of the loose sand, a huge pyramid begins to rise, stretching higher and higher into the air, carrying Sonic up with it. Plunder watches in awe, celebrating his success. It turns out that this is the lost pyramid of Sandopolis, and the place the pirate will find all the treasure he could ever want. Sonic makes his way down to the base of the pyramid, but when he gets there, a huge stone door begins to open. The group look on as a huge stone figure comes into view, the guardian of the pyramid, which Plunder stupidly decided to dismiss as being a bunch of nonsense. But it's all too real. When the door is fully open, the Stone Guardian announces that any heretics who raise the pyramid will be cursed to die at his hands. Sonic wastes no time in attacking. He launches straight into one of his famous spin attacks and easily smashes the Guardian to pieces. He comments on how it wasn't as tough as it seemed, that it was no challenge at all. He starts gloating, and while he is distracted, the stone pieces begin to shake and move, quickly reassembling themselves back into their original form. Knuckles tries to warn Sonic, but he thinks it's just a joke. He doesn't realise what's happening until it's too late, and the Guardian slams its fist down onto the Hedgehog, smashing him face first into the ground. Sonic is hurt, but he somehow survived the brutal attack. Knuckles moves aside and tries to distract the Guardian, challenging him. It works and the Guardian turns around, stomping his way towards the Echidna. Having been on the island all of his life, Knuckles has read the texts which speak of the Guardian. He knows he can't defeat him, but he has another plan. Knuckles moves onto a rock which is surrounded by quicksand, and of course, the Guardian walks straight into it. His heavy stone feet easily sink into the sand. He struggles but cannot break free, and soon enough, he is gone, completely engulfed by the sand. While all this was going on, Captain Plunder used it as a distraction and snuck inside the pyramid. He is now most likely well on his way to getting his treasure. Sonic and Knuckles brush themselves off and follow through the entrance, hoping they can catch up. Deeper inside the pyramid, it seems that Plunder is already close to his goal. He finds a switch on the wall which should reveal what he is looking for. He pulls the switch and the area lights up. When he and his team look ahead, they are greeted with an entire room filled to the brim with gold, jewels, ancient artifacts and all manner of other priceless treasures. He orders his second-in-command, Filch, to start gathering as much as he can carry, but of course because Filch is a ghost, he can't grab or touch a single thing, so it's all up to himself and the Professor to grab the loot. While they're grabbing as much as they can, Sonic and Knuckles find their way into the room. Knuckles orders Plunder to drop everything. As guardian of the island, he can't allow anyone to steal anything from his home. Plunder refuses, but then the lights begin to dim, covering the room in shadow. According to Knuckles, this could be due to the pyramid's age. With something this old, things are bound to become unreliable. This is the perfect opportunity for Plunder to escape. He uses the cover of darkness to make his getaway. Sonic tries to follow, but Knuckles stops him. It seems he knows something that Sonic does not. There's something lurking in the darkness, and Plunder is about to be greeted by it. As Plunder and his team dash down the corridor, they think they have succeeded, but when Filch looks back, he notices some strange glowing lights following close behind them. Plunder doesn't care. All that matters to him is getting the loot back to the ship. Filch watches as the lights grow bigger and brighter, taking on some sort of form. When Filch points out that they look like ghosts, it piques Plunder's interest enough to make him turn around to see what's going on. And when he does, he and the rest of his crew are greeted by 3 huge evil-looking spirits. They scream and run faster to the exit, the ghosts following close behind, never letting them get too far away. They reach the exit, but the door is starting to close. If they don't get there in time, they could be trapped inside forever. With one well-timed dive, they make it through to the desert outside. And when they're sure they're safe, they check to make sure they still have their loot. Unfortunately, it seems they dropped their bags when they were running for their lives. All they can do now is head back to the ship and try to come up with some convincing story for why the mission was unsuccessful. Back inside the pyramid, Sonic and Knuckles are still trapped. Knuckles makes his way over to a circular object on the wall, designed to let sand flood inside and lower the pyramid back down into the ground, this time permanently. He punches the thing, causing it to break, and the sand instantly begins to fill the room. Luckily, Knuckles has read of a secret exit, which should allow them to escape, but because the texts he read are so old, he's taking a gamble as to whether the information is true. It turns out that he is correct. He finds the secret door, and the two head on through to safety, before the room gets completely filled. Elsewhere on the island, Grimer is giving the good news to Robotnik. The repairs to the Death Egg are now complete. The only thing they need now is a source of incredible power, something that could keep the Death Egg up and running permanently, something like the Master Emerald. Robotnik turns to a shadowy figure behind him and orders this mysterious person to bring him the emerald and to eliminate anyone who gets in his way. Though I'm not sure why Robotnik doesn't try to grab the other emeralds at the same time. With those he wouldn't even need the Death Egg, he could become all powerful again just like he did in that previous story. But anyway, the figure obeys and sets off on his mission. Back underground, Sonic and Knuckles have finally managed to find their way out of the pyramid, and were able to navigate the twists and turns of a confusing cave system. When they emerge, they find themselves inside the mouth of the volcano, located at the centre of the launch base zone. Knuckles thinks they must be close to the Death Egg by now, and soon he finds out just how right he is. When the two look above them, they find themselves face to face with the Death Egg, that huge metallic face staring back down at them. It's not long before the two run into trouble. In mere moments, a hatch on the Death Egg opens and a swarm of new badniks begin flying out and head straight towards them. One of the badniks fires a laser at them, but as he does so, Robotnik's voice calls out to them from the machine. With the use of these badniks, he can see everything that's going on. Each of the robots is equipped with a camera, which relays images and information directly back to him. This doesn't worry Sonic at all. He of course wastes no time in smashing the badniks apart like he always does, finding them to be no real challenge. But Knuckles thinks he has a faster way to defeat them. He and Sonic go to a small walled area where lava has collected. The badniks follow and group together as they prepare to attack at once. But Knuckles punches the wall, causing it to break. Then he and Sonic run for it as lava bursts out and rushes towards the badniks, melting them all at once. Hopefully these ones weren't being powered by animals. That would be quite unfortunate. Knuckles starts running away, leaving a confused Sonic wondering where he's going. Knuckles has a strange feeling that he knows what Robotnik is up to, and as such they have to get to the emeralds as soon as possible. When they arrive at the emerald chamber where the emeralds have been hidden, they find the door has been broken off. They cautiously make their way inside, but once there they find the Master Emerald has already been stolen. Without it, the entire floating island will fall from the sky in a matter of hours. They need to get it back, and fast. Sonic notices that the emeralds look different from the last time he saw them, but Knuckles tells him that this is their true form. After the weakened two halves of each emerald were rejoined, they were able to regain their full power, and as such, take on their original forms. Something begins to glow in the corner of the room, and when the two go over to investigate, Sonic is given quite a shock as he sees one of his old enemies standing before him. The metal version of himself, Metalix, standing atop the Master Emerald, getting a major power boost from the Chaos Energy. Now that he has been discovered, Metalix grabs the Master Emerald and takes it to a nearby platform, which turns out to be an ancient teleporter. He dares Sonic to follow as he warps away to places unknown. Sonic and Knuckles aren't going to back down from this fight. They jump onto the teleporter and are sent higher into the air, to the Sky Sanctuary Zone. The first thing they see upon arrival is Metalix finishing up his power boost from the Emerald, and the first thing he does is use his full power against Knuckles, flying directly into him and knocking him out cold. Sonic checks on Knuckles, but as he turns back to face Metalix, the robot has already finished charging up its main laser and fires it at Sonic. Then he charges in to deliver a powerful punch, smashing Sonic into a nearby wall. Sonic recovers quickly and begins running in circles around Metalix, but it turns out he isn't fast enough. His robot counterpart easily punches him once again and sends him flying a short distance away. The battle has taken a lot of power out of Metalix. He realises that he needs to return to the Master Emerald so he can return to his full power and finish the job. But when he turns his attention back to the Emerald, he watches as Sonic lands on top of it. With no more options available, Sonic decides to try absorbing some of the Emerald's energy himself. The power flows into him, causing him to go beyond his normal limits, transforming his body into the insane power-crazed demon known as Super Sonic. Within seconds, Metalix is pushed back as Super Sonic slams into him at high speed, then quickly follows up with a punch powerful enough to break through the robot's armour, utterly destroying Metalix with a single blow. Back on the Death Egg, Grimer breaks the bad news to Robotnik, who is of course furious at Metalix's failure. He orders Grimer to do something, or their plan to launch the Death Egg will never happen. But luckily for him, before the fight with Sonic, it seems that Metalix placed the Emerald on top of a second teleporter and was about to send it up before he was interrupted. All Grimer has to do now is activate the teleporter, and the Emerald will finally be in Robotnik's hands. Down on the floating island, Knuckles wakes up just in time to see the destruction of Metalix. He looks over to see Super Sonic tearing it limb from limb, and sensing a new target, Super Sonic immediately begins a new battle with Knuckles. He charges in and begins pummeling the poor Echidna, who appears to be unable to match the Hedgehog's insane power. A stroke of luck strikes as the power taken from the Master Emerald finally begins to drain away, returning Sonic back to his normal self, leaving him confused as he is unable to remember anything from when he transforms. They realise there are more important things to deal with right now and try to reclaim the Emerald, but when they try to get to it, they find they are too late. It has already been transported up to the Death Egg. Without the Emerald's power, the island begins to crumble piece by piece. The platform they are standing on begins wasting away, unable to stay afloat any longer. But then, something even worse catches their attention. A deep booming rumble fills the air, too loud to be any kind of storm, and whatever it is, it's getting louder. It's getting closer. Out of the thick smoke, a terrifying image appears. The huge metal face of Robotnik's Death Egg looms before them, beginning its ascent into the sky. But, at the moment, that's the least of Sonic and Knuckles' problems, as the platform they are on is still wasting away. If they don't find a way down soon, then gravity will do the job for them. On board the Death Egg, Robotnik is overjoyed with his victory. He is already planning what his first move will be now that he has all the power he could ever need. His first task is to wipe out the Emerald Hill Zone. Or at least that would be the case if he didn't notice Sonic and Knuckles on the monitor, still trapped with nowhere to escape. Knuckles has an idea, though a risky one at best. He tells Sonic to grab onto him, then leaps off the shrinking platform and begins slowly gliding down to the ground. But Robotnik isn't going to let him escape that easily. He orders his army of robots to swarm out and make sure they don't make it back to the ground in one piece. The Badniks fire shot after shot, while Knuckles struggles to dodge them all. Sonic leaps up off Knuckles' back and attacks the Badniks one by one, bouncing from one to the other until he is high enough to smash his way into a low window on the Death Egg itself. Knuckles cannot follow, but with the Badniks gone, he can at least make his way back to the floating island safely now, and come up with a new plan of attack. Sonic is left with no other option but to explore the Death Egg randomly, moving from room to room in the hopes that he can find some way to stop it and reclaim the Master Emerald. Naturally, it won't be that easy for him. It's not long before he's greeted with more Badniks who immediately attack. It's a long, hard struggle, but Sonic tries to fight his way through, taking on the seemingly endless onslaught of Badniks one by one. The scene shifts back to Knuckles, who has managed to return to the floating island. He's searching through a bunch of ancient texts which talk about an extremely powerful weapon the island is hiding. He can only hope that it still works after centuries of being inactive, but given the situation, any glimmer of hope is worth a try. And with that, Knuckles hops into a control chair and begins manoeuvring the island like some sort of floating fortress, taking the fight straight to the Death Egg itself. On board the Death Egg, it seems that Sonic was unable to stand up against so many Badniks at once. Now he stands before Robotnik after being captured, forced to listen to taunts about how he is now the dictator's prisoner. Robotnik isn't going to lock him up yet, however. He's going to force Sonic to stand and watch as he wipes the Emerald Hill Zone off the face of Mobius. He orders Grimer to target the zone, who immediately obeys. The computer locks on target and begins charging the main weapons, counting down until they're ready to fire. Sonic can waste no more time. He desperately struggles and starts smashing the robots who are guarding him. It looks like he's not going to make it, but then a massive jolt strikes the Death Egg, causing everything to shake violently. When Grimer and Robotnik take a look outside to see what hit them, they're greeted with the sight of the floating island, a huge ball of energy suspended above it, firing repeated blasts at the machine. The battle heats up as Robotnik turns the Death Egg towards its new target and begins firing back at the island. Knuckles tries to hold his ground and fire a few more shots, but without the Master Emerald, it's going to take a while to build up the energy he needs for the weapon. Robotnik fires back a few more times, but while he's preoccupied with the battle, Sonic takes the opportunity to knock the Master Emerald from its casing and take it back for himself. Robotnik orders his robots to get the Emerald back, but the whole Death Egg is rocked with another mighty tremor as the floating island fires at it once again. Though this time, the jolt was powerful enough to send the Emerald, Sonic, and a few of the Badniks smashing through one of the windows, sending them free-falling back to the planet below. As he falls, Sonic gets a better view of the battle. He watches as the floating island sends another blast towards the Death Egg and starts winning the epic firefight. But, unless he can find a way to survive the fall, he won't be around long enough to celebrate the victory. One of the falling Badniks grabs the Master Emerald and fires its jetpack, beginning to fly back up to the Death Egg. But Sonic can't let that happen, so he fights back with one of the other Badniks and grabs its blaster. He fires and is right on target as the blast destroys the robot, sending its wreckage and the Master Emerald back down towards the floating island. The other Badniks charge in and try to take out Sonic, but once again he fights back and manages to take one of the robot's jetpacks for himself. He uses it to return to the surface of the floating island, so he can begin his search for the Emerald. On his way up, he gets a good view of the half-destroyed Death Egg, falling like a flaming meteor back towards the surface of Mobius, hopefully towards an unpopulated area. Sonic hops down near to where he thinks the Emerald fell, and begins his search, finding it quickly enough. But when he picks it up, he's suddenly hit with a sneak attack as a powerful blast hits him. He's hurt, but he's still not down for the count. When he looks up, he finds himself face to face with Robotnik inside a new battle mech after bailing out from the doomed Death Egg. Sonic and Robotnik begin their fight anew. Sonic spins into the mech while Robotnik tries to smash the hedgehog with his huge metal fists. But Sonic has had enough. There's been too much fighting already, so it's time to end this battle. Sonic speeds around faster than ever, spinning into Robotnik's mech again and again and again, destroying it piece by piece. Even Robotnik is surprised by how ruthless Sonic is being. But eventually, Robotnik gets pushed too far back. He reaches the edge of the island and tumbles over it, causing him to fall back towards the planet. Sonic didn't mean to push Robotnik over, but luckily for his enemy, the thrusters on Robotnik's mech fire up and slow his fall. If he's lucky, he may still survive. Knuckles comes running up to Sonic moments later, shouting about how they need to get the emerald back to the Emerald Chamber before it's too late. If it's gone for much longer, the whole island will lose power and come crashing down. Sonic decides to hold the emerald hostage, however. He has some plans of his own. He says he will only hand it over if Knuckles grants him a favour in return. Of course, Knuckles has no choice but to accept these conditions. Several days later, we see practically every family in the Emerald Hill Zone sailing away to a new home. Knuckles agreed to let the Emerald Hill folk live on the floating island, where they will hopefully be safe and hidden from Robotnik. No longer will they need to live in fear. They will be able to live in peace on the island until the day that Mobius is safe once again. Sonic and Tails watch from above, flying around in their plane to make sure everyone gets to the island safely. And once every boat is across, they come in for a landing. Once Sonic lets Knuckles know that everyone is safely across, he gets to work lifting the island back into the air. With the Master Emerald back in place, the island rises from the sea, back to its home among the clouds.